September 11th, 2001. It was, of course, a defining moment in modern history. But beyond the event itself, 9/11 really marked a huge turning point in how we relate to information. It created these deep, deep fractures in public trust that, let's be honest, are still with us today. So in this explainer, we're going to deconstruct the very architecture of those narratives. And this quote, it just nails it. This is exactly what we're focused on. We're not here to prove or disprove any one theory. Not at all. Instead, we're going to explore that fracture point, that exact moment where the official story and the persistent questions split apart, creating a kind of blueprint for how we process major events even now. Okay, so before we can really dig into the fractures, we have to build the foundation, right? So let's start by just walking through the established, officially documented timeline of what happened on that Tuesday morning. I mean, the attacks unfolded with just terrifying speed. Think about it. In less than 2 hours, this series of coordinated hijackings led to the collapse of the Twin Towers, a direct hit on the Pentagon, and, of course, the heroic sacrifice of passengers over Pennsylvania. So you've got 4 commercial airliners turned into weapons by 19 al-Qaeda terrorists. 3 of them hit their targets in New York and Washington. The 4th, United 93, was heroically thwarted by the passengers and crew on board. So here is an absolutely crucial point in the official account. Listen to this. The collapses were not caused by the impacts alone. According to this exhaustive investigation by NIST, the impacts basically stripped the fireproofing from the steel columns. Then, the intense, very long-lasting fires weakened those structures to the point of failure, leading to a total progressive collapse. This detail is going to be really key in a minute. And this is where the story starts to get a lot more complex. Because almost immediately, certain physical anomalies, procedural questions, they became these focal points for skepticism. And they created deep fractures in that official narrative that have, frankly, never fully healed. The first, and maybe the most enduring question, revolves around a building that many people today don't even realize collapsed that day. World Trade Center 7. It was a 47-story skyscraper that was never hit by a plane. So here you see 2 completely different explanations collide. On one side, you have the official finding from NIST. Uncontrolled fires caused a critical column to fail, which led to the first ever complete collapse of a modern skyscraper from fire alone. But on the other side, you have the fracture point. Critics point out that the building fell perfectly symmetrically at near freefall speed, and they argue that this kind of collapse looks exactly like a controlled demolition. Okay, so the next major point of contention, it really centers on the physical evidence, or what some say is a lack of evidence, at the Pentagon crash site. The 9/11 Commission is definitive. It states that Flight 77, a Boeing 757, hit the building. End of story. But the scrutiny, the questions, they focused on those initial images from the aftermath, the entry hole that looked surprisingly small, and the apparent lack of huge pieces of aircraft debris like wings or engines on the lawn. This is what led to theories of a missile strike. And the last major anomaly we're going to look at, it isn't about physics or debris. It's about procedure. The question is this: how did the most sophisticated, most powerful air defense system in the world fail to intercept 4 separate hijacked planes over a span of almost 2 hours? The official explanation, well, it points to a kind of perfect storm of institutional failure, a total breakdown in communication between the civilian FAA and the military's NORAD. But for critics, that explanation it strains credulity. They argue that such a complete system failure points to one of 2 things: either incompetence on a scale that is almost unimaginable, or a deliberate order to stand down and let the attacks happen. So we have these competing narratives, right? The official one and the critical one. Now, instead of trying to prove one right or wrong, we're going to introduce a totally new framework to analyze their behavior. Think of it like a cybersecurity expert analyzing the structure of a computer virus, not just the damage it does. We're going to use this model, which acts like a behavioral defense architect. Again, this isn't about debating the content of the claims. It's about deconstructing the tactics used to spread them. Just like how you'd analyze malware to understand how it infects a system and how to defend against it. First up is what we call the trust parasite. This is a classic tactic. You don't have to disprove every single piece of the official story. No, you just find one powerful, confusing anomaly, a smoking gun, and you use that one thing to infect the entire account with doubt. It's a parasite that feeds on trust. Next is the XCOMP exploit. Now, this is like claiming a hidden vulnerability, a secret backdoor, was built into a system from the very beginning. In a narrative attack, this means you allege there was some hidden cause, an internal mechanism, that makes all the visible evidence, like planes and fires, totally irrelevant. It bypasses everything we can see. And finally, there's API rerouting. This is basically a diversion tactic. The attack hijacks the narrative and reroutes all the blame from the known, proven culprit, in this case Al-Qaeda, to some vague, untraceable group of insiders. It effectively changes the endpoint of the whole story. And here is where you can see how it all just snaps together. The collapse of WTC-7? That's the perfect trust parasite, the ultimate smoking gun. The controlled demolition theory? That's the ex-conf exploit. It alleges a hidden mechanism. And the whole no plane or missile theory? That's a classic API rerouting, shifting blame away from Al-Qaeda to some shadowy group of insiders. Now, here's the most critical part of this whole analysis. These behavioral patterns, these tactics, they didn't just fade away after 9/11. Oh no, they became a validated, reusable blueprint for creating distrust in institutions across the board. The legacy is just profound. The unaddressed questions from 9/11 created what you could call a trust vacuum. This proved that the trust parasite model was incredibly effective. It established a behavioral blueprint, and maybe most importantly, it shifted the public's focus from arguing over physical evidence to questioning the hidden intent of authorities. The process is simple, and it's dangerously repeatable. First, you create a trust vacuum. Second, the attack blueprint is proven to work. And third, that exact same pattern is just copied and pasted onto new targets, different high-trust institutions facing entirely different crises. And once you see it, you see this blueprint in action everywhere. The attack on science during ClimateGate, it used the exact same structure. Find a smoking gun in stolen emails to allege a hidden conspiracy of fraud, and by doing so, bypass decades of climate data. Same thing with COVID-19 narratives that alleged a lab leak or malicious intent. It was a way to bypass the evidence of natural origin and vaccine effectiveness. It's the same behavioral architecture, just pointed at a different target. So this leaves us with a final and, I think, really crucial question. If disinformation isn't just random noise, if it has a predictable, structural blueprint, then maybe the most important skill we can develop isn't just consuming information, but learning to recognize its architecture. How can we learn to spot the blueprint before the building of distrust is complete?